Hi, my name is Ian Benavides, and I'm an Assistant Director with the City's Neighborhood Housing Services Department. Today, I'm going to speak to you about the City's Strategic Housing Implementation Plan. The implementation plan is a 10-year plan to address housing instability within our community, building off of the core values of the Housing Policy Framework, which is accepted by Council in 2018. Today, I'm going to go over a little bit about why the SHIP was created, how we identified the needs within our community, the approach the SHIP takes to solving housing instability, our 10-year funding plan, the strategies that were put together through community input process and other planning documents, and the public engagement and next steps so that you, the community, can be engaged as we move forward. What is the SHIP? The SHIP is a plan that builds off of the Housing Policy Framework. The Housing Policy Framework was accepted by Council in 2018 and laid the foundation for housing as a key priority in the city moving forward. The SHIP is a 10-year plan to stabilize households most at risk of housing instability. It creates new targets for our community, working with our community partners on how we implement them. It focuses on households with the lowest incomes, and it includes strategies that were sourced from not just the Housing Policy Framework, but other planning documents that tie to housing. This plan was drafted by over 80 stakeholders, building off much of the work that was done in other planning documents that tied to housing instability issues. We've included community leaders and people with lived experiences of housing instability, Housing Commission that was reconstituted with the Housing Policy Framework adoption, community-based organizations and nonprofits, housing developers, homeless service providers, and many more. We also identified 4 key lead agencies to help us implement this plan. Those include the City of San Antonio and its various departments that touch on housing, the San Antonio Housing Trust, the San Antonio Housing Authority, and Bexar County. At the center of this, we have 4 key principles: affordability, quality, accessibility, and choice. This means that we're providing housing at affordable levels for our community, that the housing we build is quality for our residents, that our housing is accessible, not just in location, but in structure, and choice, that residents have a choice whether they want to stay where they live or move in different parts of the town. The Housing Policy Framework was accepted by Council in 2018, and it really set the foundation for housing as a key priority for our community. It identified 24 strategies across 5 key action areas: develop a coordinated housing system, increase city investment, increase affordable housing production, rehabilitation, and preservation, protect and promote our neighborhoods, and ensure accountability to the public. I'll talk in the next couple slides about how we've done on that progress, but it also set a 10-year housing target of over 18,680 units, and we are on track already to exceed those within the next 5 years. In the Housing Policy Framework, those strategies have been underway since the acceptance of the Housing Policy Framework in 2018. Since then, 12 of those strategies, or nearly 50%, have been completed. 5 of those strategies, or around 21% of those strategies, are in progress right now, and 7 of those strategies, or 29%, are currently included in the Strategic Housing Implementation Plan to move forward. With regards to our housing targets, the Housing Policy Framework set a target of 18,861 units. Right now, we're on track to finish and reach those goals within the first 5 years. Because of that, part of the Strategic Housing Implementation Plan is going to be looking at the need in our community and setting a new 10-year goal. One of the first things we did was to define affordability within our community so we can ensure our new target goals are addressing the need. Our goal was to establish a shared definition of affordable housing to be referenced across city programs and departments. This was an 8-month process undertaken by the City's Housing Commission. We consulted with the public, city agencies including CPS, SAWS, VIA, as well as community housing development organizations. When setting affordability standards for housing programs, typically the Department of Housing and Urban Development's area median income calculations are utilized. These incomes are based on a geographical area that includes the City of San Antonio and surrounding municipalities. Because of this, those area median income levels are slightly higher than the City of San Antonio itself. In order to compensate for that, what we did is we looked at data through the census that was specific to the City of San Antonio residents. In doing so, we were able to adjust down the allowable threshold from 80% of the area median income to 60% of the area median income. These new income limits reflect the City of San Antonio's residents more accurately than the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This new definition includes 60% of the area median income for rental units and up to 120% of the area median income for home ownership. When we speak about the city's area median income, sometimes we lose track that these are residents here in our community. As an example of what the area median income translates to in terms of households, there are some examples here on this slide. For 30% of the area median income, you're looking at a household that makes approximately $20,000 a year. This could include 2 adults and a child, where one adult gets disability payment or works part-time in hospitality. When we talk about up to 120% of the area median income, this could include 3 adults. One adult works full-time as a paralegal and another works full-time as a bank teller. These are examples that illustrate that the area median income and the definition that we've set covers many of the hardworking families here in the city of San Antonio. Next, we look to identify the community need. We know that we were exceeding our 10-year targets in the housing policy framework, so we wanted to better understand what the need is in the community to help us set our new 10-year targets. We wanted to understand the number of people in our community who are at the highest risk for housing insecurity. We partnered with our consultant, Economic and Planning Systems, to develop an index that would help us identify those households that meet that criteria. We examined cost burden and supply-demand gaps within our community to clearly identify where we needed intervention. The results of our analysis identified nearly 95,000 households that are most at risk of housing instability. The majority of those households identified in the analysis included individuals and households making less than 50% of the area median income, with up to 29% below 30% of the area median income for renters, and up to 19% of homeowners being below 30% of the area median income. With that, the SHIP's approach was not solely housing production and preservation. We know that in order to address housing instability, you can either increase or subsidize a household's income or build and preserve homes affordable to them. So what does this mean to be cost burdened? A household that is cost burdened is paying more than 30% of their income on housing, and they have to sacrifice other household expenses as a result of trying to cover their housing costs. This can mean that things like healthcare, food, transportation, and education sometimes need to be cut or limited in order to pay for their housing costs. We can address this housing instability in 2 ways. You can increase the incomes by job training programs, benefits navigations, or housing vouchers that pay the difference between what a household earns and what their rent may be. You can also decrease their housing costs, and these include buying down their rents or building and preserving more affordable units. The Strategic Housing Implementation Plan outlines how the city and its partners can provide assistance to these households using these 2 strategies. For increasing household wages and subsidizing incomes, we will work with our partners at the San Antonio Housing Authority and Bexar County to track the number of vouchers within our community. We'll also work with the Department of Human Services that tracks our benefit navigation, which is connecting households to benefits that may be available at the local, state, or federal level. We'll also partner with the city's Workforce Development Office to track the number of households and residents that go through the SA Ready to Work program. When we look at producing and preserving more income-restricted units, we'll look at how our resources are helping to build and maintain our affordable housing stock. We will also leverage private sector development and see how we can make changes to our development code to provide things like accessory dwelling units and home sharing programs that can help make more affordable units available in our community. Through this approach, we are looking to set a new housing target goal of 28,094 units over 10 years. Again, leveraging the other 3 sectors that I talked about, including the private sector, the public assistance, and job training, we're looking to address 2 of the root causes in the housing policy framework for housing instability. Those are that the housing supply is not keeping pace with economic growth, and that housing costs are outpacing incomes. Our new targets include 28,094 units spread across homeownership and rental. We have over 12,900 units in homeownership that include nearly 2,000 units of production and nearly 11,000 units in homeownership preservation. For rental, almost 10,600 units in production, and nearly 4,500 units will be preserved. The majority of these targets for both homeownership and rental fall below 50% of the area median income, aligning with the need identified in the community. We've also included 1,000 units of permanent supportive housing that help our homeless population transition into stable, affordable housing. As you can see from this slide, the new targets that were set in the Strategic Housing Implementation Plan seek to address the need here in the community. Nearly 75% of our new targets are targeted towards households making 50% or less of the area median income. That's about $33,350 for a household size of 3. When we look at the new target goals in terms of production and preservation, we can see an emphasis placed on the preservation of our affordable housing stock, with nearly 55% of our new targets set for preservation over the next year. In order to achieve this new 10-year plan, we've created a 10-year funding plan that will help guide the investment of the city and its partners over the next 10 years. In order to do this, we've analyzed our pipeline of existing affordable housing projects over the past 5 years and identified the required subsidy per unit and tools leveraged, the AMI levels that they've addressed, and the programs. We've also identified the funding required and the source of funding for those programs. In total, we've created a new funding plan that represents approximately $3.3 billion in housing investment over the next 10 years. The 10-year goal achieves this through a variety of funding sources. Approximately $1 billion in locally directed funding sources will leverage nearly $2.3 billion over the next 10 years. The funding plan includes a variety of funding sources that will be leveraged against primary funding sources for affordable housing development. These primary sources include housing tax credits, conventional debt, and private activity bonds, which supply the majority of funding for affordable housing projects. Layered into there are locally redirected funding sources, including the City of San Antonio's housing bond, the City of San Antonio's affordable housing budget, which includes general fund and federal fund revenue, and partnerships with the San Antonio Housing Trust and the San Antonio Housing Authority. The next step in the Strategic Housing Implementation Plan was to pick up where we left off on the strategies included in the Housing Policy Framework. To do that, we partnered with over 80 stakeholders to ensure that we've identified the core issues in each of these strategies and lay out a timeline for implementation. In addition, we've included housing-related strategies from other local planning documents and initiatives. These plans include a variety of documents that relate to homelessness, to climate, to historic preservation, and to anti-displacement, as well as transit. In total, the SHIP has 36 strategies that are highlighted and organized into the Housing Policy Framework focus areas to develop a coordinated housing system, increase investment in housing, increase affordable housing production, rehabilitation, and preservation, promote and protect neighborhoods, and ensure accountability. I will highlight a strategy from each of the 5 focus areas during this presentation, but please know that this document will be available online for you to read through and provide comments digitally, or, as I'll talk about in a little bit, you'll be able to attend public meetings to provide your comments in person. For develop a coordinated housing system, one of the strategies that I wanted to highlight was to develop a one-stop shop housing center. This was a policy item that was brought up during the Housing Policy Framework, and its focus is for San Antonio residents to have a comprehensive, accessible, and user-friendly central access point for all their related housing needs. For increasing investment in housing, I want to highlight supporting and growing our nonprofit housing providers. As we look to increase the number of units, and those include the services associated with them within our community, we know that our nonprofit housing providers play an important role in ensuring that our residents have access to the services and housing that they need. So through this strategy, we want to ensure that nonprofit housing providers are empowered and enabled through funding and process improvements to operate at their full potential. With regards to increasing affordable housing production, rehabilitation, and preservation, we focused through the Strategic Housing Implementation Plan on providing advance the universal design and visitability standards to promote accessibility in all of our new housing and update our current housing practices. This will ensure that new and preserved affordable housing is accessible to older adults and people with disabilities so they can access these homes, remain active in their communities, and successfully age in place. For protecting and promoting neighborhoods, one of the key strategies was to establish a demolition prevention and mitigation program. The focus of this strategy would be to preserve our existing older housing stock for affordable housing and anti-displacement. For ensuring accountability to the public, which was one of the key focus areas for the housing policy framework, we want to ensure that we actualize the city-adopted public participation principles, creating an easy, replicated, adaptable, and truly participatory and inclusive public engagement process for the future that includes marginalized and overlooked communities. For the implementation of the Strategic Housing Implementation Plan, we'll work with our partners who help craft the document, including San Antonio Housing Trust, San Antonio Housing Authority, and Bexar County, each with specific focus areas to include funding affordable housing development and preservation, administering housing vouchers, or creating and enforcing policy within local control as they relate to eviction and taxing. Next, I want to talk about the public input and next steps for the Strategic Housing Implementation. What's next for the Strategic Housing Implementation? Over the next month, we're going to be providing many avenues for the public to be able to weigh in on the plan and provide suggestions to make the plan better. We'll be having 3 public meetings that will be available both in person and virtual, with the option to join virtually and listen in on Spanish. We'll also have documents posted online in both English and in Spanish, and the ability to provide comments on an online forum. Our 3 public meetings will be held across the city, one at UTSA's Westside Community Center, St. Philip's College, and the Ego Library. Again, these meetings will both be in person and in virtual with the ability to have Spanish interpreters, and the 3rd meeting will also have ASL opportunities for individuals that may require sign language. How do I get involved? You can start weighing in now. The draft summary are now viewable online in English and in Spanish at sanantonio.gov/NHSD/coordinated housing system/SHIP. Comment collector is online, which you'll be able to find on that website, or you can email housingpolicy@sanantonio.gov with any comments or feedback. You can help develop a strategy. You can sign up through the comment collector and let us know if you'd like to be a part of a specific strategy moving forward. Staff will reach out when the policy development begins. You can also track our progress. The Housing Commission will have monthly meetings where we'll be updating them on the progress of the SHIP. And the Housing Commission dashboard and annual report, which will be up soon, will be able to provide live updates on how we're doing towards our new housing targets, as well as accomplishing the strategies outlined in our Strategic Housing Implementation Plan. Thank you very much for tuning into this presentation, and please feel free to reach out on our website if you have any additional information or comments. Thank you.